Thank you for coming out this evening. My name is Sandy Daly. I'm the chair of the Brattleboro Area Interfaith Clergy Association, who is sponsoring this gathering, and also for this past year have been chairing the Southeastern Vermont Long-Term Recovery Committee. 1 year ago, we were caught off guard. Floods washed away homes, businesses, property, jobs, and our sense of security. Bit by bit, thanks to first responders, neighbors, volunteers, town, state, and federal government, and a persistent and indomitable spirit, Vermont continues to recover. In Windham County, service organizations, faith communities, town planners and officials, and business representatives met together to pool their resources in response to the storm. This evolved into the Southeastern Vermont Long-Term Recovery Committee, one of 9 such committees around the state. The United Way receives donations, and together with this committee hears cases brought before us by case managers and seeks the best resources to meet the needs of individuals, including funding, volunteer, and paid labor. Of 1,500 households registered with FEMA from our county alone, 1,250, that's 5 out of every 6 who registered, are now closed cases. That's good news. About 250 cases are still open, and recovery is still in process. There is work yet to be done. These cases that remain open are the toughest ones, where there were total losses, where there is a need to rebuild, where there is persistent mold, well problems, septic problems, erosion problems, and even pre-existing complications. These all make for slower recovery. Long-term recovery is a process, a long one, sometimes very visible, and in other ways and at other times not so visible, internal, emotional, psychological. There is much work still to be done. If you know someone who still has needs, or if you are someone who still has needs, there are flyers down here in the manila envelope with information that will lead you to help. There is help out there. And if you're someone who has resources and an interest in helping others, there are many ways for you to help. And those also can be listed on those flyers. So please, before you leave, even if you're not sure you need one, take one, because you might just find someone whom we can help. There are many resources we have to offer: time, money, skills, materials. Each of us has a way to make a difference. I'd like to invite our town manager, Barb Sondag, to come up and share with us some of her reflections.
Thank you. I've been given the privilege this evening of saying a few words of thanks to our first responders, and it is a privilege. It's a privilege to acknowledge the members of Rescue Inc., whose work during the event included swiftwater rescues during and after the flood. In Brattleboro alone, over 30 rescues were performed, but lives were saved throughout this area by rescue staff and members. I'm proud to acknowledge our local fire and police departments who worked along with rescue before, during, and after the flood. We have members of some of our folks here. Firefighters and police officers, who worked around the clock evacuating citizens, assisting with the water rescues, monitoring our roads and our bridges. And after the flood, utilizing 6-wheelers and other all-terrain devices, these folks checked on other people who were isolated, helping deliver medications and oxygen. And all of this work was performed while still responding to the normal call volume every day. I'd like to thank the Red Cross and its volunteers for joining us in the days before the storm to plan for the shelter and for opening up the shelter in Brattleboro, probably one of the earliest shelters to be opened in the state of Vermont. That shelter opened early and remained open for a long time after the flood, providing not just a warm place to sleep, but meals and drinks. And we all know that their work continued far after the flood event. Now, first responders is defined as those first on the scene of an emergency. And normally we think of firefighters, the paramedics, and the police when we hear that term, first responder. But Tropical Storm Irene expanded that definition, as during the storm many people became first responders, and I'd like to thank some of those. I'd like to acknowledge the dispatchers who worked round the clock taking calls, answering questions, and directing emergency personnel to scenes. Every emergency demands a dispatcher to coordinate the service providers, and the coordination required to successfully respond to Irene was phenomenal. I would like to thank the members of our Public Works Highway Department. These individuals worked countless hours before and after the flood. Prior to the flood, they ensured that the gasoline and diesels powering our ambulances, fire trucks, and cruisers were ready, and that all necessary tools, such as chainsaws, etc., were on trucks and ready for use to keep roads open. These folks were out during the storm monitoring roads, culverts, and bridges, and the work done since Irene has been tremendous. I would like to thank the members of our utility division. Never during the event was our water system compromised, and although our wastewater system was almost overrun with stormwater, our operators kept the system up and running and quickly addressed sewer main breaks that threatened our waterways. I'd like to acknowledge representatives from CVPS who were indispensable during and after Irene. We anticipated high winds and down lines, power lines, but what we got was high water and live power lines. Our fire department worked closely with CVPS, shutting off power to prevent fires and quickly getting power turned back on in the days and weeks following Irene. I'd like to thank the drivers of the Brattleboro Beeline bus operated by the Current, and recognize Mary Habig, who's here this evening. Prior to the storm, we reached out to Mary and her people, and during the storm, we had a driver utilizing one of their buses who was actually delivering food to the shelter when other deliveries were stopped because roads were closed. They transported citizens to and from the Red Cross shelter during and after the flood, and they were there whenever we needed them. I would like to thank the news agencies, and in particular WTSA and our own Tim Johnson, which is our emergency broadcasting station, who ensured that our press releases got out and got heard. Communication during any emergency is key to success, and we cannot successfully communicate with the citizens without our local news networks. I could go on. I didn't even get into it recognizing the National Guard, the state and the county police, and all the others who were so indispensable, the Vermont Emergency Management. But I'd still miss someone and some organization, and I will apologize in advance for if I've offended anyone. But I would like to, just in closing, thank the first responders and their families who for weeks on end didn't really see them. These folks worked so hard during and after the event to keep everyone safe. And I'd like to have us acknowledge that in so many ways, so many of us on this date 1 year ago, I look at Chris Hart, and I think we were all first responders in our own ways. And I want to thank each and every one of you. Thank you.
Well, I was going to thank some more people, but I think we've all pretty much been thanked one way or another. And so what I'd like to say is that that's really what has made this an opportunity for us to be stronger as a community, because not only those who are identified by their outfits or their job description were first responders, but we were a community of first responders, neighbor to neighbor, organization to organization, faith community to faith community, all reached out in whatever way they were able. There's so many stories that it is powerfully moving to be a part of that story. And now the Hollowell Singers are going to sing a song which is titled "No One Stands Alone," and certainly that is the story that we have heard of people standing for each other. There were many lives lost in the several states that Irene came across. In Vermont, there were 7 lives lost. And now, in moments of remembrance, we'll hear those 7 names read by representatives from different faith communities in our region, and a bell will toll for each name. Also, after the 7 names have been read, the bell will be rung one more time, for there are many losses that were suffered. Losses as devastating as we might imagine, of memories, of homes, of photographs, of property no longer there. Losses that will remain with people throughout their lives. And so, may we now remember.
Ken Davis of Ludlow.
Anthony DeLesney of Brattleboro.
Father and son, Michael J. and Michael G. Garofano of Rutland.
William Flower of Woodstock.
Master Sergeant Sean Stalker of West Rutland.
Ivana Taseva from the Republic of Macedonia.
The Hollowell Singers are going to once again lead us in song, and as they sing, "There is a Light in the Darkness," we will begin the light, going from the front here to light your candles, knowing that each of us can be light in the darkness for one another. And so may we share that light that brings love and hope, a hope that strengthens our communities, strengthens our relationships, strengthens our spirit, so that we are not only starting over strong, but that we will be stronger still. It's good to know that all around the state, right now, there are people gathered, hearing stories, looking at photographs, lighting candles, embracing one another, standing together in many different ways. And so as we go from this place, may we know that there are still many ways for us to gather to support one another. Take a moment and thank someone beside you, or thank one of our officers here, and then listen, for you'll hear bells ringing, and those bells will be ringing all around the state. When you're ready to leave, you can blow out your candle and return it to the box up in the front. And I invite you as well to please take a flyer, either for yourself or for someone that might need it. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for remembering. Go in peace.
So, this is a Swiss cowbell that my father got in Switzerland in the Sonnenland in 1956, and it's been in Vermont ever since. In those days we had party lines, and he used to write at his study, which is about 300 yards from the house, and so when the phone calls came in, my mother would take out the bell and ring it. He'd know to pick up the phone. And I thought this bell was really appropriate because it's been in Vermont so long, to have this evening to join in the ringing to remember Irene 1 year later, both the tragedy of Irene and also the extraordinary way in which Vermonters pulled together to solve our own problems, because while we got help from the federal government and from the state, we really did it ourselves.
Hi, this is Mike Merwicki, state representative from Putney, representing the Wyndham 4 district of Putney, Westminster, and Dummerston. And just want to say that being part of tonight's vigil has been a wonderful remembrance of some very difficult times, and a reminder of how Vermonters have come together in these difficult times. Vermont has a lot to be grateful for, and despite or because of the difficult circumstances of Hurricane Irene. And a year later, I think it's important that we not forget that we still have work to do here, and more importantly, not forget what we have and focus on what we have instead of what we don't. And we have each other in Vermont, and it's a wonderful reminder. Today's event was a wonderful reminder of that.